Good afternoon, it's Michael here from Michael's Card Art, and it's Sunday afternoon. I think it's the 21st of June. And today we're going to look at shading, and we're going to look at how to achieve some very subtle shading effects. And this is on the back of a couple of projects that I did the other week. I was sitting here thinking, what can I do that's a little bit different? And anyway, so we've come up with some shading as an idea. And what I've got here is obviously a bird cage with a background of shading and some stencil work. And what I want to do is replicate this card using a number of these techniques that we've got here. And shading, I think, is really an underrated technique that we've all used, but if you're like me, you haven't really appreciated the full effects of shading. And I'll show you a couple of other cards. And here's another one using shading to give you a beveled edge, if you like, and it's darker on the outside, and as we get into the center of the card it becomes less and less until we've actually got nothing in the center of the card. We're going to do this one next week, and looking at that one you can see there's similarities with this card as well, where I've used shading once again with a bit of a beveled, or you may know the term better as a vignette effect, where it's darker on the edges, especially in the corners, and then it moves to a lighter effect in the center. That's vignetting. And I've done that with this card and also to a degree with this one. This one I've put shading in a vignette effect, but I've also put in some stenciling on this one. But as you got center into the center, you will have noticed, and hidden under here, I'll show you so you can see there's very little color in the center underneath those flowers. And as I said, I think it's really underrated in terms of a technique and the effect that it can give you. I was so impressed with, I did some reading on the shading, and I was so impressed by the looks that you can get that I decided to do about 5 or 6 different cards. And so these are the 3 that we're going to be using to sort of like showcase the effect and some of the techniques throughout this program. So without further ado, we'll move to this one. And if you don't have all of these dies and stamps, as I've said to you before, it's not a problem. Grab what items or elements that you've got that might represent some of the elements that I've used, and create your own card with your own elements, but using the techniques that we talk about in some of these videos that we've got here. So what I'll do is I'll grab all the elements that we need, the bird cage, and I'll go through this cutaway of the die cutaway that I've used here. One thing I want you to be aware of is when I decided to do, well, this is the chain of events that happened. I had a stamp set that I had not done anything with. It was a stamp and die set from Stampin' Up, and I'm just looking for it now, or maybe I've lent it to someone, but I'll dig it out if I can before we get started as part of the preparation, and show you all the elements on that stamp and die set. But when I started the shading, I knew I had the bird cage, but so when I deliberately started to put the color onto the card, I wanted to make sure that the internals of the bird cage were quite light. So you'll notice here I've got dark, light, dark. What I did with that light area, I carried that through down through the length of where the bird cage was going to be placed on this card, and I deliberately kept that light. The rest of the card, or the real estate on the card, I was quite happy to darken that up. And even though I've got stenciling all over the card, my shading was deliberately kept light for the main area where I wanted to draw the eye, and those other areas I could make those a little bit darker, but we'll show you that as we go through the program. So let me get everything ready for you, and we'll kick off with shading our bird cage and butterflies. Now I've got all the sets that I've used for this, and now, like I said, you don't need to use all of these. Use whatever you've got in your stash. Pretty birds from Stampin' Up. this is the bird cage that we used for this one here. And from the Daffodil Daydream set, I've got my two butterflies, firm favourites when it comes to kneading butterflies. That's from Daffodil Daydream. And I'm showing these stamp sets from Stampin' Up! For those Stampin' Up! Demonstrators who still like to use some of the old sets. I've got my upline. She has probably 20 stamp sets and has been doing it for nearly 20 years. I've been doing it for 2 years and have collected over 200. Not smart on my behalf, because sometimes people don't like or can't get the older sets, and therefore it becomes a little bit difficult for them sometimes to do something that I've created when I've used lots of different old sets, because people may have gotten rid of those. However, as I said, I keep saying, do what's financially viable for yourself and improvise with various sets that you may already have. Charming Duck Pond is my source for these fabulous, yes, here they are, these fabulous reeds. This is a fabulous die set from that one, so you can see we've used those there. Now the flowers, I have to give that a bit more thought where I got these purple flowers from, but we'll come up with that solution before we finish. And also the this work here on the cutout die, what do we call these? I don't know. They don't actually cut anything out. What they do is they cut the card but leave it intact, if you like, and then what you do is you play around with lifting and shaping the cutaway, if you like. And in this case I've used it to support the sentiment, but this it's a really, really nice effect. And for that one I used this die here. And what I also have for you is this die. Now we can use this die to stamp the background here. In this case, what I did, rather than stamp it, I think I've used the designer series paper that came with this set, but I'll grab that out. And the reason I'm thinking I must have done that is because the pattern is a pink and a brown, and that is too difficult to do it with a simple stamp, this multicolor. So I've got a sense that that is done with the designer series paper, but I'll grab that out and have a look at that for sure. So we've got all our pieces here that we need. I'll go and get some cardstock and we'll begin our shading. I will grab for you also the stencil that I've used, just to give you a guide. And if you've got that one, well and good. Otherwise, find another stencil that you may have and we can use it. And now you'll notice it's quite a subtle use of the stencil. Let me grab that and we'll be back. Now I was looking to see the designer series paper that I said that I think I've used for that. Nothing more frustrating than to know that you've got something in your stash and you just can't find where you've put it. Anyway, not to worry. Let's get started with our shading, and I'll put that out of the way, move that over there. And I've got two good healthy brushes. Here's our bird cage. These are the links of the chain, here we go, that we'll use to hang the bird cage. But I just wanted to cut this out in advance so that I could see where I need to focus the lighter color so that it comes down onto the bird cage. Now, I'm using two colors at the moment. Now, you need, and the two colors will be So Saffron, which is a really light yellow, and also Crumb Cake, which is a brownish tone, a light brown. And for the stenciling, we'll use a darker color, but I'll put the stenciling on after I've got the color right. If I put the stenciling now and then apply the color, I'm going to potentially dilute a lot of the color from the stenciling. So stenciling goes second. So let's get started with the yellow being, so if we look at, now, and The bird cage, what I've done with that is I've given it some colour, and I've randomly touched Versamark over the cages, over the cage wires, to give it a gold gilded look in parts. But I'll show you that as we get to that. So I'm just putting colour in now and sweeping it around through there, and that's kind of like the trail of yellow that I want. I'll have some yellow over here in this part, but it'll sweep around like a lazy sea, if you like. Okay, now colouring, I just have a good brush, nice fine brush. It's got good real estate to apply good colour evenly. Now I'm starting off the card with the shading, and I'm moving it on the craft mat before it reaches the card. And what I've done there is effectively gotten rid of those wet areas that will give you blotching if you apply it straight to the card. Now don't worry about the fact that this might be darker just here. That's quite okay, and it will add to the shading experience of the end product. Okay, so we've got light and dark yellow areas. Let's get some brown on here and see how that goes. So once again, applying the brush into the pad well. Now what I will do is that sometimes where I want to get rid of, now see what's happened here, little colours, wet colours still existing on the brush before the application, before applying it to the actual cardstock. Okay, so we've got bits of brown in here, and we're looking for light and dark areas like we've got there of the colour. Okay, now just for a little bit of excitement, I'm going to put some red in here. It'll be like a Cajun red. I just want to lift that yellow and brown tone a bit. So grabbing another brush, we don't need a lot of red, just enough. So this is a Cajun red, just enough. You think I'm rubbing most of it off. I just want enough. See how it's now just coming in onto the card? There you go. And there's a little bit of red there. And that's really all I want. And that gives us coverage onto our cardstock. And I think I like this light here. I like this. Yeah, so I think we've got what we need in terms of all the colour. Okay. Now let's see what the birdcage looks like in that. Okay, you can still see the colour coming through, which is exactly what I wanted. All right, let's get those brushes to the side. Now I'll show you how I've gilded the cage. I don't mind those colours sitting there at the moment because I will use those in part to colour the cage, and they can easily be picked up off the craft mat and put onto the so just get our brushes back out again. So all of these colours we're going to use onto the cage. So that's the red brush first. Use whatever you can pull off the background. Apply it roughly. And here's the brown. Just be careful you don't tear any of the other elements. Okay, that's about as much as I think we can get from there. So nothing gets wasted. There we go. Now there's enough colour on that, I think. Maybe just a little more brown. Let me put those two away and grab the crumb cake again. Actually, you know, I don't want crumb cake. I'm going to use some of the pecan pie, which is a brown with a bit more red into it. Once again, onto the table. There we go. Now, the reason I chose the pecan is simply because I wanted a slightly more vibrant colour. Now, I'm just going to colour up the chain that will hang the cage. And it just needs a touch of colour, and we'll gild that as well. There we go, there's a link somewhere, here it is. There we go. Okay, now after I've done the Versamark, I'll clean that off. See how it's, yes, that's good. I've distorted the cages a bit, but all right. Let's have a look at that now. And we've still got our yellow beam of light coming through. All right, let's Versamark that up. And I'll grab some embossing powder. There we go. And when I'm randomly applying colour, I will generally look for a stamp set that I can use. This is the Versamark. This is like the embossing powder glue. And what am I looking for here? I'm looking for a stencil. Another thing that you can use if you don't have a stamp set in mind, where did mine go to? A piece of sea sponge. Oh, look, I only had it here the other day. Let me just have a look over here. No, I can't see it. All right, so we all know what a sea sponge looks like. Oh gosh, I must be hiding things from myself. All right, not a drama. All right, so what we'll do then, I'll show you my next fallback. And what can I use here? Here's something that I really, really like. It's from a very old stamp set, but it's lace. And I'll use that to apply the Versamark randomly onto the bird cage. So all I do, just using my finger to do the application. The main thing I want is, let's get rid of those little chains from there. What I want is some of the bigger areas. There we go. I'm not covering the whole thing. I just want random elements of Versamark. And what I should have done in advance was given it a dusting down with my embossing buddy, and that would apply a fine powder of, I don't know what it is, chalk, I believe, of sorts, that allows you to rub the area and make sure you don't get any embossing powder in that area. All right, so let's see what it looks like. I'm just going to give it a blast of hot air. Now we have the card progressing nicely. I've got the bird cage here. You can see it's gilded with the embossing powder, and it's randomly covered with embossing powder. If you do, when you're stamping it, and you do get blotches of colour, blotches of Versamark, just hit them with a brush. I had a big lump of it here, and so I just randomly dusted off to give me a more Spartan look of embossing powder. All right, so the next thing that we need to do here is apply our stenciling. Now, what I used for this I think it was this one here. Now, what I did was simply place the stencil over the top, and I don't want to physically cover the whole thing with stencil marks. So I'm just going to use this section up in here. I will bring a bit of colour down here using this one, and there may be a little bit of text over here that I'll use there. So let's show you how we've done that. And I just grab a dauber, and I want some darker colour. Now the darker colour in this case I'm going to use is a richer brown, and let's see, some darker brown. Why don't we go with either early espresso, which you can see is quite a rich colour, or where is the soft suede? Oh, here it is. So I think actually this might be a better colour, just to give it a darker look than the colours we've got there. Now you can use a dauber, or we can use a blending brush. I've used the blending brush before, so I may as well carry that through. Hold your stencil firm, apply some colour. There we go. Just apply the colour evenly. Work it off, make it even on the brush, and then start with applying some colour. Let's just have a look and see how much colour we've got there. Perfect, that's enough. Now, I wanted to get a little bit of text. Oh. Now, we'll take some colour and place it over here, like so. Okay, that's good. And then the last part will just be some text. We can keep that on an angle like that. I want this little bit of text here. Actually, I'll place it horizontally. Okay, maybe a little bit more. There we go. And you don't need a lot of colour on the blending brush. And there we go there. And I think that will be sufficient for... There we go. And I think that's a nice amount of stenciling for the effect that we're wanting. All right, what we'll do now is I'll show you how this die cut works. And I'll show you how the application of that. Okay, now that we've got our elements cut out, we've got the flowers, the butterflies, we've got the foliage for the bird cage. It's quite a simple card, really. And a bird cage, the foliage, some flowers, and some butterflies, and that's really it, apart from the sentiment. And I'll show you also how we cut this out with the die. But let's first colour the flowers. And in this card, I've chosen a what do I call it? It's a Blackberry Bliss. So it's a nice rich colour, and it'll offset nicely with the yellows and the background colour of our project. So what I'm doing with these flowers, I'm just going to do a strong colour on the edges of the leaves, and this is where you might elect to wear a pair of gloves of sorts. There we go. And by doing the outer, it means that I'll be able to just give the inside just a bit of a token touch, and it'll be nice and light in the center. And I'll put a sequin of sorts in the center of these flowers. Okay, we're just about done here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's enough. And alright, now we're getting the edges done there. Now what I can do with the center of the flower is just a gentle touch I like the contrast of the dark and the light, and we managed to maintain that contrast just by giving the center of the flower a very light touch of color. Okay, so that's done. We'll come to the sequence shortly. Now what I'll do is our butterflies. Now I've got 3 butterflies. I'm going to use, let's just see what we've got here. I might use a flirty flamingo, which is a nice bright pink. And let's see what that looks like. And when I do butterflies, I just generally get the dauber. I do the edges, like so, of the wings. This is my stock standard colouring for butterflies. And then I bring some colour into the centre, like so. And I think that works well. And what I then tend to do, fold it in half so that you've got the is it the thorax or the belly of the butterfly. I'm just going to put that, touch that into some maybe some cherry cobbler, which is kind of like a crimson red. Let's see what that looks like. There you go. And that's a nice butterfly, wings slightly tipped. Yes, and that can go very well there. So I'll do a smaller version of that. Is that this one? Yes. So the flirty flamingo just on the edges of the wings. Take it into the center. There we go. And it's belly. Get some red. And that's done, like so. All right, now the third butterfly, I'll do it in a slightly different color. Let's get a polished pink. And that'll be a different tone altogether. And there we go. And once again, just okay. And that butterfly, I'll also colour his abdomen. And there it is there. So it's a different tone of pink, which works well. There we go. So there's our 3 butterflies. Let's move that to the side. And then all we've got to colour now sorry, I'm getting myself confused with where things go. All right, we've got our butterflies, we have got our flowers, some centers for those. Now we've got our leaves. So what I've done in the past for colouring these, you can use your blends, but I'm just going to go with a mossy green. And I'm just looking for a little bit of spare cut, because what I don't want these to be touched by the colour. So just manoeuvring some cardstock there. There we go. Right. And dauber for the mossy meadow. And here we go. Oh, it's not going to work. Alright. And just with, now you could use your alcohol markers with this, blending pens, whatever else, crayons, water paints, whatever else you have available. This is what we're looking to, there we go. Now I'll just do the other side with the other piece of pampas grass. There we go. And the reason I don't always use colour cardstock when I'm colouring these things is because I like the difference in tone that you get when you do it by hand. It's not even, like so. I like that. And just give that a little bit of a touch. All right, now these ones here, we could do maybe a crumb cake. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, finish with that. And a bit of crumb cake. Crumb cake here. And just protecting that. Okay. This one and the final one. There we go. All right. So those elements are done. And I think that's just about it. Other than now, let me just tidy this up. Now, how are they looking? So we've got our pampas grass here, and one there. That's good, down there. And then you can see the light still coming through to the cage. I need a piercing mat. The butterflies will sit randomly like this. And I've got that one there. Right, and the flowers, what we're going to do with those is just give them a bit of shape. And we can achieve that like this. You just need some form of foam mat. Now this is quite a thick one. I was using something thin like this. And as you can see, it's done its time. I can't bring myself to show it out though. Now, what we're going to do with these flowers, I'll just grab that. Okay, with our stylus, pressing down in the center, and then it'll work itself into a bit of an armadillo ball, they call it. Okay, it doesn't need a lot of pressure, and they won't stay as tightly rounded as that, but I just needed to make sure that we could get them rounded up or shaped up. Okay, that looks good. I'm just going to reach into my stash of sequins and see what I can find here. They're blue. Are they purple? No, no purple. So I'm just looking for a purple set. Okay, I think the last part of the puzzle is using this die cut that only extracts parts of the cardstock away from the card when you use it. So let me just go and put this. It's just this card's a bit too big to use in the mini die and stamp press, so I'll have to use the larger one. So I'll come back with that, and I'll show you the results of running this through. Now here it is here. As it comes out of the press, you'll see that shape, and then our job is merely to shape it, push it through to give you the effect that you want. And if I look at it from any angle, that's the sort of thing you want. But I'll use that, like I did in the last one, as a holder for the sentiment. I'll work out how to do that. Now, in the last one, I did do a bit of gold embossing. So let me show you that. It's very simple. I used an embossing pen because what I wanted to do was just touch up with the embossing pen some of these lines. I won't do all of them, but it's just very gently touching it with the embossing pen just to give it some highlights, I suppose. And just a little bit here. So by no means am I using all of the real estate to gold emboss. Okay, so let's just sprinkle a bit of embossing powder over that and see what we come up with. There we go, that's enough. And you can see there where the embossing pen has touched. I'll just quickly colour that off. Okay, so this is what that looks like now that it's been embossed and shaped up a little bit. So I think it's a nice point of difference and to be used in some of the cards. And when I first saw it, I thought, oh, what's the point of all that? But yeah, no, I think it's good. All right, so let's start assembling it now. The only thing we need to do is get the backing paper behind it, but we'll do that after we've assembled this. Now, I'm going to shape. Where's my piecing that gone? I'm going to there it is. Shape this just gently. That's the cage. I mean, just to give it a bit of texture. May as well use this one. And it's just, there we go. It's as much as it really needs. Just see how this goes. There we go. So it sits up off the, there, that's good. It sits up off the table or off the base nicely. There we go. So you can see there is a bit of dimension on that. All right, now let's do the magic with the dimensionals. I'm just going to place, what is all this here? I'm just going to place some dimensionals on the base of this just to give it that bit of height, and I'll remove that and I'll put a couple of dimensionals up here, and that's probably what I can get away with, I think. And it's just showing through a little bit. Okay, now when we place this on here, we just want to make sure that there is a good amount of yellow showing through, and let's do it like this. Right, and that's there, and we'll compress that down just a little bit, and that should give, there we go. And see, it's still sitting with some height on the card. Okay, now we can start to assemble our flowers. Put in the reeds first, because one will go underneath and one will go on top like so, but the one on top will be hidden by that, like so. All right, and trusty old Tombow. And it's, do I have enough? Yeah, now it all comes out at once. And just looking for a cotton bud, and I don't seem to have my trusty supply here. Where are they? Alright, so let's put one in there. Like that. Okay, and this one down a little bit lower, and there we go, like so, and then I've got plenty of glue there. Okay, that one's there. There. And there. Okay. Just going to put one over here. One there. That's not where I wanted it, but anyway, it's there now, and that one there. Okay, now our butterflies. Let's get one here, and there's another one going here. Now, actually I won't put one there, I'll leave that for something else. Can we put it there? That's good. And a small one over here, like so. And just put that there. Just have to see, there it is. There we go. All right. I'll just get rid of that bit of glue. We will be able to hide that spot with some gold braid. Now what I'm going to do here, this is the chain that, there we go. I just need to get some glue onto that, and then that can hang like so. All right, and so let me just get that, and then, all right. Okay. I'm just lifting that up. Okay, one, and here's the other part of the chain. Oh dear. All right, there we go. And I can cut that off when it's dried. Okay, so now the last thing we need to do is to just place it onto some backing paper. This is one of the images from that designer series paper. It's absolutely a fantastic collection of images. So that's one we're going to be putting there. They're just beautiful. They're all in that watercolor theme. And look at this. I couldn't have put them all upside down if I had have tried. So they're just very, very nice imagery for the task ahead. So I've chosen this one as the background piece, and I'll just prepare that off. I'll cut that down, and I'll also get the backing card that we're going to use to display this. Okay, so we're going to have quite a wide border on this one, and as under the main base card, and so it will overhang like that. Let me just get some glue onto that, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, there we go. All right, and there we go there. Now, the border is not going to be exactly the same all the way around on this one, but I'm quite happy with that. Be careful when you are gluing it, you don't put glue on that, because you won't be able to lift that up then. Okay, that looks pretty square. Right, and then it'll go onto the backing sheet like so. All right, and I'll do the sentiment. Now, one of the things that I did do on the last one, let me just bring this up here, and I did this really more for giving the sentiment some support. There we go, I'll show you what I mean. So what I did was just rolled this behind the sentiment. This is a piece of, what do we call this without my glasses? Where are my glasses? Here we go. Okay, and what I did was really just this. I had this sitting up here at the back, like so, and then I'll adhere this onto the card base. Once I finish this, I just want to show you how I did this sentiment, and then I can let you go then. So I'm just going to put a bit of glue down here. This will be the bed for the this to just adhere to. I'm just going to put that into, there we go, a shape like that. And then here's the sentiment, and all I've done there is use the leftover brushes from colouring and shading to give the card its colour. And then what I'll do is apply, what I need is a dimensional, and I'll just put the dimensional on the back of this. There we go, and it will just attach itself just here, and it will sit like so. There we go. Voila. Right, now I'm not going to attach it to this card base for the, just yet. I've got something else I want to do in, but for the purpose of this video, this is where we're going to end. And you'll see that what we've reproduced is very similar to what we started with. And I really enjoyed doing this card with the shading, with the great designer series paper, and also with the other techniques and the elements that we had at our disposal. I think it's a very nice card. I hope you've learned something, and I hope you enjoyed that. But as I say each week, I hope to see you next time on Michael's Card Art. Thank you very much.